Welcome to the final episode of the TV Journal segment. This is basically a reflection of watching the videos in reverse time and then making some conclusions, from what it was, the way that it's experienced from the outside, what it looks like on the screen, and the way it felt on the inside. And there was definitely a difference in what was portrayed, or the way that it was portrayed, and in terms of what it felt like on the inside. And so I just kind of want to reflect on and share. I just want to share my reflections on my journey, what I learned, some of what I learned, and also just what I could gain from playing back these videos. More than anything, I would say this journey of releasing these journals, making it known to the public, to those who have watched it, and for those who will still watch it in the future. Thank you to the internet staying there. Just me going on this healing journey, putting these very raw and vulnerable and also truths about my journey that was so deep and so life-changing. There's a great element of healing to that, because the shame is taken off of not wanting to share, and the shame is taken off of what will people think when they find out I actually had TB, and just the stigmas around the disease. So let's go. As you can see, this is quite a tender situation, but I think it's very important. So vulnerability in the streets. The experience I saw on the screen is so much different to what it felt like on the inside. And I actually made a video. I started with the first one, releasing the first TB journal, and then I made a life at the moment episode where I actually shared my reservations about continuing with the TB journal segment, because it was just so difficult. It was like, okay, this is what I'm seeing on screen, and there's so much happiness, and there's so much people call it personality, but there's so much happiness happening in the video, and it's such a far stretch from what I was experiencing on the inside. And I remember, I think no one else can speak for the emotions we feel on the inside, regardless of what it looks like to them and what we project and what we portray on the outside. But that video, the first one, the day I was diagnosed, what I felt like on the inside was definitely not all that happy. Yes, I know I have a personality that is very out there and very much alive and energetic, and that is something that's kind of there. Even if I don't want it to be there, it is kind of there, you know what I mean? And that is obviously, there are various reasons for why we have the personalities that we do, why we have the outward portrayals of who we are as we do, knowing the reasons, and I don't have to go into that now, but it was really difficult for me to see that this is what I portrayed on the outside, and what I felt on the inside was so different. It was the polar opposite. And I remember the rest of that day just feeling so down, feeling like, what do I do with my life right now? I had these expectations, and yeah, so it was definitely quite, that was quite striking for me. And in the video that I posted, the Life at the Moment video that I posted just after that, I'm wearing a red cap on that one, but I mentioned that I didn't want to go through the hell again, that I went through, and it doesn't look like hell on the outside. And it was just that, I want to say expectation gap, but it's not really an expectation gap, it's more a portrayal misconception, or misrepresentation. That is my mom arriving. So let's just go to the next point until she comes in, and then I'll just continue. Putting it out there, frankly, this experience was truly one of the most difficult things I've ever had to go through in my life, ever. It was absolutely, I was going to say disgusting, but it was absolutely painful and difficult, and I struggled. I don't know, I've struggled a lot in my life, especially mostly internal anguish, to be honest. But yo, it was difficult. It was genuinely so incredibly difficult, and I'm still recovering, emotionally and mentally. I'm still recovering from that experience, and it's a difficult one. Okay, I'm gonna pause this now. My mom's coming inside, so okay. And so, as I mentioned, mentally and emotionally, I'm still recovering. It was with TB that I realized that even though the doctor says you don't have to take the medication anymore, even though the doctor says that you're done with your treatment, the experience that you had inside, the mental anguish and the disappointment in your heart and the discontentment, the disencouragement, whatever it is that you experienced, still persists unless you delve into it, unless you open up that door and you deal with it separate from the physical experience still persisting. You know, it will be there. And I remember it was only, I finished taking my medication in May. It was the 13th of May. And it was only in September that we started unpacking it again. It was when I started telling more of my friends and family about what happened. And it was like going back. I remember just thinking about the experience. I was there again inside. It had the same level of intense emotion and thought processes, and that indicated that it was still necessary for me to delve into the experience, and speak about it and deal with the emotional journey of the process. And then another reflection is that I struggled greatly with depression and anxiety before TB, and so the mental battle was heightened when I had this whole struggle. And it was, yeah, as I mentioned in the TB journals, or the videos before that, I actually got sick in August already, and the doctors just didn't know what it was about and diagnosed me with pneumonia, and there was a possibility of TB, but they first treated me for the pneumonia, and then I was diagnosed only in October with tuberculosis. So it was just a downward spiral, TBH. And then I started seeing a therapist, which helped me greatly to get out of that downward spiral. And then I stopped seeing the therapist when I was diagnosed, which I don't believe was really wise, but which I do regret, but we're gonna get to regrets now. But yeah, so I had a great depression and anxiety struggle, even apart from what I went through, which was devastatingly hard on me. And yeah, and then without my family, I would not have made it through. There's just no way without the big five. And so I want to acknowledge them. And yeah, then one sure regret I have, I'm going to read this one, but one sure regret I have is that I did not tell my family and all of my friends that I had TB. So one of my good friends from campus years, she had TB, I think 2 years before me. And so I shared with her that I've been diagnosed, and she could journey with me so much, which, if I'm telling you, it meant the world to me, and the kind of support that I had from her during that time. So she gave me advice on like drinking Ensure, which was a nutritional booster. It's like a shake thing that you can make. Yeah, so that really helped me, and just that support from her. And I'm going to read the rest now. I believe that my family and friends' support and speaking up about my struggle would have helped me a lot more. It was truly difficult to yell on the inside that I need help, but not feeling allowed to tell those around me about it. Struggling on your own is just not healthy. And so that is certainly a regret that I have. Then one thing about TB and its context in my family is that my mom's sister actually passed away due to TB, and she also struggled with depression. And by the time she was incorrectly diagnosed, and so it was goners for her. So the reference to TB is that my aunt died, and then it's also the reference to depression. And so I had a very similar experience. I could relate to the fact that she had struggles with depression and that she had TB. And that being at the back of my mind was incredibly difficult for me, because even if it wasn't necessarily what I admitted to, but it was a constant reference in the back of my mind. And especially the fact that I'm so young. I was 24 at that point. 2020, I was 24 at that point. And I wasn't really educated about the repercussions of TB and of the medication and of the disease until obviously the doctors educated me about it. So I think that's why I was so adamant about releasing and recording these journals, because I knew the ignorance I came to the disease with, if you know, the ignorance I was met with coming to the disease, and so it was just, it's difficult when you're ignorant. Ignorance makes it more difficult, and so I read up a lot, and I shared links on the TB journals, or a link that really helped me. And I would really encourage you to share my videos and to share this. I don't generally ask people to share my stuff, but I do encourage you to share my TB journals and to share this one, if this is the one that you share, or the first one, but just so that people have an awareness that TB is all around us. TB is prevalent, whether it's latent in your lungs, or whether it's an active disease. You have the active disease, it's everywhere, and there are so many of us that's going through this journey silently, and I don't think it's necessary for us to suffer alone and to suffer in silence when it comes to tuberculosis, especially because it's one of the leading killers in our nation. And so I think it's just very important for the news to get out there and for awareness to be created. So yeah, once I told my family, my friends, it was genuinely a weight lifted off my shoulders, and the healing could truly commence when I started opening up about it. I knew that these journals would serve as a healing process for me, and I'm glad that I took that chance. Speaking about our struggles truly liberate us from them. Thank God for that gift of relationship and healing. And one dear thing for me is that I wanted to tell my grandmother that I had TB, but she passed away before I could do that. And I do wish that I told her. She knew I was sick, and she had not a premonition. She had an idea that I don't know how else to say it, but she knew. I think she knew that I struggled with it, or struggled a lot. And then I hope that those of you who have watched my journey would have gained more insight into the reality of a TB patient. It's not just a matter of, quote, there is medication for it, so you'll be fine, unquote. It is a mental struggle and a physical battle nonetheless. Like, just because there is medication for it and just because there is a solution for it doesn't make the journey any less strenuous, any less difficult. Don't minimize someone's struggle just because there is a solution for it. Acknowledge the struggle too. And then there is so much more to life. The experience with TB and some other life-shattering realizations certainly changed me inevitably. When people are like, don't let this get you down, or don't let this change you, I am certainly of the opinion that one ought to let it get you down and ought to let it change you, because that's kind of the purpose of it. It sounds funny, sounds unconventional, but once you are actually down to where you don't know how you'll get up, then when you get up, you're rebuilding. You're not building on emotions that weren't dealt with, and you're not building on circumstances that are left stagnant because you didn't want to face it, because you didn't want to let it get you down. If something is difficult, let that weight hit you. Because when it hits you, you realize that you can't bear it in your own strength, and you can't bear it on your own. And that's when God's strength truly comes to the fore. That's a good word, but that's when God's strength truly comes to the fore, because then He's the one that builds you up. But it's when we try to maintain those burdens and try to struggle with it in our own strength, then where are we really allowing for circumstances to change us for the better? Because yes, mense, ek het al gehoor, mense is like, ja, die sekere siekte wat daar verander het, of wat ook al. And I'm like, okay, yes, it did change me, but I still had a choice as to how it will change me in the long run. It inevitably had an impact on my life, but it was my choice for how I will use the lessons and how I will use the experience to really change me for the better. So that is my reflection and all those things and evaluation of my TB journey. And there's probably more to it, but I thought that these were important things to share. So yeah, thank you for listening, and do share these videos. I think it's very important to create awareness of it. And that's my dad's footsteps in the background. So, okay.